There was a time, a much simpler time, where fictional stories revolved around protagonists of either chosen by an upper deity, gifted with specific talent, utterly badass, or just simply a power fantasy character for people to project themselves onto. And while these characters and stories aren't bad, there just seems to be a character who really blends in with the rest, yet somehow stands out from the crowd. That's none other than Strife from the Final Fantasy series, a character that not only popularized an entire genre across the globe, but was by far the most human fictional character of its time. So, after seeing this character time and time again, I've decided to check out the game and see for myself what made Cloud so special and why he resonated with so many people who play Final Fantasy VII. Ladies, gentlemen, and users of the internet, today I present you Cloud Strife, biggest zero to the perfect hero. Enjoy. Take that! Cloud was born and raised in a small village named Nibelheim by his mother. His father, on the other hand, passed away when Cloud was at a young age, as Cloud stated himself during a flashback. All throughout his childhood, he couldn't really connect with the other kids that lived in the village. For the most part, he was pretty much an outcast that no one wanted to hang out with. Though Cloud acted as he was special compared to the other kids and didn't really care about hanging out with them, deep down, he secretly did wish he would be accepted into their group. He, of course, had his eyes on one particular person in the group, Tifa Lockhart. I wouldn't say he stalked her or anything, but he did occasionally watch her from a distance. On one particular day, when Tifa's mother passed away, Tifa decided to climb Mount Nibble, believing that her mother had been waiting there for her in the afterlife. While the other kids slowly started to abandon Tifa, Cloud slowly followed her from a distance. While climbing, Tifa took a misstep, making Cloud rush towards Tifa and catching her. He didn't quite make it in time and they both ended up falling off the cliff. Cloud walked away with just a scrapped knee, but Tifa, on the other hand, ended up in a coma for 7 days. The adults, more specifically Tifa's father, blamed Cloud for taking Tifa to such a dangerous area, which led to Cloud getting angry at himself and venting his frustration with fights with the other kids. Fast forward 5 years into Cloud's future, he decided to leave his hometown at age 14 to join Soldier. Unfortunately, he didn't quite make it, and ended up as nothing more but a Shinra infantryman. During his time as a Shinra troop, he befriended a first-class ranked soldier, Zack Fair. At age 16, he returns to Nibelheim with both Zack and Sephiroth to check on a damaged Mako reactor. Due to failing on joining Soldier, he hides his face behind his helmet out of embarrassment. Many days later, the events of Nibelheim's attack by Sephiroth occur, and Cloud witnesses both his hometown and mother burn into ashes. To get his revenge, he heads over to the reactor only to find both Zack and Tifa knocked unconscious in the ground. Picking up the nearest weapon, he sneakily stabs Sephiroth in the back, not only leaving Sephiroth wounded, but very irritated. Cloud, getting ahead of himself with his first lucky hit, strikes once more, only for his attack to be countered and getting stabbed in the torso area. Out of desperation, his adrenaline kicks in, allowing Cloud to hurl over Sephiroth into the reactor. Severely wounded, Cloud passes out with Zack by his side. Moments pass and both Zack and Cloud get sent to the Nibelheim's mansion's basement by Hojo to start the process of creating a Sephiroth clone by infusing them with Jonova cells. 4 years later of being essentially put into a coma, Zack breaks out of his pod, releasing himself and Cloud. Cloud was undergoing Mako poisoning and was pretty much an empty walking vessel. After another year of running away from Shinra troops, Zack's journey comes to a stop, and while on the brink of death, he gives Cloud his proud possession, the Buster Sword, telling Cloud to become his living legacy and to protect his honor as Soldier. And that concludes Cloud's backstory before the events of Final Fantasy VII. Zack Fair is an extremely hyperactive person. He's loyal to his friends and loved ones, has a strong sense of justice with tons of charisma to back him up, and of course, he's really flirty with women. But why am I telling you about Zack instead of Cloud, you may be asking? Because technically Cloud is Zack for the good majority of the original game. I mean, he's still Cloud, but while trying to fit in the shoes of someone else. Let me take it from the top to avoid confusion. Cloud is a very arrogant person. Due to being outcasted by his peers, he will belittle everyone else as a coping mechanism to feel better about himself. Besides trying to put up a facade, we get to see another side of him from his youth in Crisis Core, where he's a lot more calm and reserved that can come off as shy and unconfident. It may or may not be the fact that he did fail to join Soldier and was assigned as something more as a Shinra grunt. That can really bring down someone's self-esteem. It's only after witnessing the traumatic death of Zack where a drastic change in personality happened to Cloud. Due to still recovering micro-poisoning and seeing a comrade, no, his first and only true friend die in front of him really did a number on Cloud. Not only that, but Zack told Cloud to live and become Zack's living legacy. And this is where it gets tricky, as Cloud took his words in a literal sense and became Zack in the process to some extent. Post-Mako Poison Cloud is a mixture of Zack and pre-Mako Poison Cloud, having traits of the two to make this overly confident, charismatic person that masks his sense of justice to the world. Truth be told, if it wasn't for Tifa finding Cloud back when he was still recovering, chances are that he would have possibly forgotten all about Cloud and believed to be Zack entirely. Of course, that's just me speculating. While he does tend to come off as a very serious mercenary, he's actually quite the huge dork. To trying to make cool poses and swing around his sword in a very heroic way makes him seem like he's trying too hard to look cool. I personally approve. Cloud has numerous goals throughout the story, to become a first-class soldier, proving his strength to others, more specifically Tifa, and overall just becoming a hero everyone can admire. But there's one goal that really sticks out from the rest, and that's Cloud's obsession to track down and take revenge on Sephiroth for destroying his hometown and its people. And that's as simple as it gets. It may come off as your typical good guy versus bad guy scenario, but it's revealed much later in the story that Cloud wasn't chasing Sephiroth. He was being led by him with the Genova cells implanted inside Cloud. So in reality, Cloud didn't have a real goal in the main story. He was just a puppet led to believe that he actually had one. Besides having extremely skinny arms, Cloud possibly has a lot of natural strength, even before the mental and physical boosts that come from acquiring Mako energy, as he was able to pick up with the Buster Sword when first confronting Sephiroth, which weighs about 80 pounds according to the internet. But I believe it weighs a lot more than it looks, as there's a particular scene where two Shinra grunts were having trouble pulling out the sword off the ground, while Zack manages to do so with just one hand. So for a scrawny person that has zero combat experience or any physical training should not be able to swing around this massive sword, with one hand nonetheless. Reminder that this was before he was Mako poisoned, so this was either some untapped physical talent Cloud possesses, or it's one of those moments where the adrenaline kicks in, such as the well-known story of the mom saving her child by lifting up a car. I believe it's the latter. That being said, let's take a look at his actual design. Not only is Cloud iconic to JRPG as a whole, but he's also pretty iconic in his own franchise as well. With only the knowledge of playing both Final Fantasy 7 and 15, I could take a guess that after 7 is where the franchise started shifting in themes. Take this image for example. We can see that before Cloud, everyone was well dressed, groomed with elegance, and overall just looked like people of royalty, or associated with royalty from a fantasy/medieval land. It's only after Cloud where this new modern and casual attire slowly progressed throughout the series moving forward. Even Noctis, as an example, is royalty yet doesn't really come off as one. Cloud has really made an impact in his own series, and his design played a major part in that role. While technically this design isn't his to begin with, as Zack gave Cloud one of his own uniform to switch out with his Mako drenched clothes to help the healing process of his Mako poisoning. Yet another reason why he believed to live what Zack experienced. The weird thing is that Crisis Core retconned the uniform by implying that purple represents second class soldier while black represents first class soldier, as Zack changes from purple to black once he gets promoted. My guess is to match with Sephiroth's outfit, but that's as much as I can gather. As to why purple for the original design? Well, having a bright purple color helps us see Cloud a lot easier compared to being a black outfit, as a lot of the background, especially early on in the game, have pretty dark and mucky colors, and in comparison everything just pops out a bit. A perfect example is how Barrett's attire does not blend in well with the background. Besides the point of the color, let's look at the uniform as a whole. At first glance, we can easily identify Cloud's uniform to be part of a military, from the leather boots, tucked in pants, the small armor vest, and even the solid color. They're all very reminiscent of an actual real-life soldier's uniform. Now, since this design originated by Zack's overall design, everything is pretty much identical, besides two particular points: his robotic arm and a missing armor shoulder pad. For the longest time, I was confused what this robot arm could be, as it's actually not part of Cloud's body as seen in Advent Children when he takes off his cloak. The only conclusion that I can come up with is that this is a bracer of some sort. But to my understanding, generally only archers wear bracers to prevent the string of the bow striking their skin when firing arrows. And since Cloud isn't an archer, I'm not entirely sure what this could be, but I may have an idea what its purpose is. In the original FF7 game, materia were about the size of a marble and they're typically used for summoning magic, such as fire, water, earth, and so forth. If we take a closer look on his rubber arm, we can see that it has round bumps across the hand area, making me believe that this is where Cloud stores his materia to quickly summon magic during battle. I could be wrong, so I'll leave this aspect of the design up for debate. As for the shoulder pad, well, there could be two reasons for this. One, it's just an artistic choice, as Nomura has a tendency to do this kind of design aspect with many of his characters. Or two, it's a sign of cashiering. Cashiering is a term used to dismiss someone from an armed force in disgrace, by either breaking their weapons, taking away their badges, removing their insignia, and of course ripping away their shoulder pads. I feel like Cloud subconsciously knows that his memories of Zack aren't his own, and that he's tainting his uniform, honor, and legacy in his vein. Or in other words, he doesn't feel like half the man Zack was to wear his shoes, or his uniform in this case. Again, this is Nomura's signature design, so take this with a grain of salt. Moving along swiftly to probably the most important feature in Cloud's design, his hair. Besides being extremely spiky and pointy, it's one of the more distinct hairs in the franchise, almost recognizable immediately. In fact, I'll be blunt and say that you'll most likely recognize Cloud's hair sooner than the others. Sure, maybe for the more educational fans and trained eyes, differentiating these hairs could be effortless, but for the more casual and newbies to the franchise such as myself, my brain tends to identify Cloud's more unique style almost instantly, while having to actually give a closer look at the others, which is a bigger shame that they decided to update his hair on Advent Children and newer installments of the game, as it loses some of the aggressive look original Cloud was going for. If Square Enix should take anything away from Cloud being in Smash, is that his old hairstyle looks amazing in 3D. Hopefully they'll reconsider on the remake. Before ending this extremely long segment, let's take a quick look at Cloud's Advent Children's outfit, or a Cloudy Wolf as it's officially called. After the events of FF7, Cloud went on a state of depression, which I'll go into much more detail on the topic on the next segment. Nomura wanted to express this by giving Cloud a much more darker look to his design. In exchange to his bright purple uniform, he now wears a black cloak that is less revealing as if trying to hide himself or hide something from others. Even his stance depicts his more depressed state in comparison to the original. In a way, it shows that light of hope Cloud once had is missing, and just comes across as if he's not even trying anymore, as if saying what's the point. Another interesting choice is that this design is very reminiscent of Sephiroth's outfit. From the black color scheme to his cloak, the X strap across his chest down to the very end of his leather boots. If I had to guess why, then I have to say that this is Cloud's way of saying that he has finally reached his goal of becoming first class soldier and has surpassed and somewhat became the person he admired as a kid, but at the cost of two people he cared about dying in front of him, and poisoning the live stream and the planet with the geostigma after the battle with Sephiroth. And thus, this outfit became a punishment as well as a reminder if all this was really worth it. And if you think this is pretty sad and tragic, oh boy, we haven't even touched the surface on how bad it really gets. Throughout the movie, we see a wolf a total of 3 times. At first, I thought this was supposed to symbolize how Cloud sees himself, as a lone wolf who does things his own way and works alone. As we can clearly see, he has some sort of new obsession with wolves in this movie. But after thinking about it and rewatching the movie for a second time, I noticed that there was a pattern with where the wolves were placed in this movie, which I'm sure a lot of you may have noticed as well. The first wolf appears next to the Buster Sword, which lays on top of where Zack died. The second one appears after a phone sinking underwater sequence, which is very reminiscent on how Aerith dies, and of course is also the location where she died. Lastly, the third one appears after Cloud beats Sephiroth for the second time. So the meaning behind these wolves, at least what I believe they are, is Cloud's guilt towards unable to save both Zack and Aerith from dying, and unable to help the people of Midgar from the geostigma. More on the subject coming up. Cloud idolized Zack so much that when the time came, he accidentally tricked himself into believing he was Zack. He wanted to believe he was someone that people acknowledge like Zack, and will keep adding lies to his delusions so he will never revert back to his former self. This comes even clearer when he desperately wants Hojo to give him a number as a failed Sephiroth clone, just to feel like he has some sort of meaning, even as something as pitiful as a failed clone. But why? Why will Cloud fight so hard to keep the illusion he created for himself? The answer, believe it or not, is actually not as complex as I initially thought it would be. He just dislikes who he was. Cloud was a nobody, with no true friends, no real talents, and overall just a massive weakling. In contrast to Zack, who in Cloud's eyes seemed to be the perfect hero he always dreamed to be, he had everything Cloud wanted and it was everything he wasn't. Cloud was just a big fat zero, not even worthy of being numbered as a Sephiroth clone. A failed Sephiroth clone. But not all hope was lost. When Tifa and Cloud fell down to the livestream, Cloud's subconscious was actually putting an effort to piece together what was real and what was his made up fantasy. Granted, he may have not done it alone, but the support of the livestream that was curing Cloud from the Genoa cells Hojo implanted, which is one of the reasons why he became this way in the first place, and Tifa guiding him through his real memories. My point still stands that Cloud's subconscious was actually struggling to make sense of everything. And by the end of it all, he came out of the livestream back to his former self. Flaws, weaknesses, and everything in between came back to Cloud. The best indication of this is his motion sickness, which was absent under the Zack persona. But what was important is that Cloud accepted that part of himself, enough to get past his own delusions and work around his own weakness. Now this is where it gets kinda iffy with his developments that rubbed fans the wrong way, and that's Cloud from Event Children, as a lot of the fans believe to completely ruin his development. While I do agree to some extent, I like to throw my 2 cents as well, and say that his interpretation of Cloud is just as important to Cloud's character arc as the original FF7 Cloud. While it may have not been handled ideally as a lot of us all wanted, I personally wouldn't brush off this Cloud as nothing more as an empty shell of who he really was. Let's put it simply this way, Cloud witnessed both Zack and Aerith die in front of him without being able to do absolutely nothing to save them. This obviously haunts Cloud and makes him feel guilty about it. And on top of all that, he is put on a similar situation for a third and final time with Denso, a kid that both Cloud and Tifa essentially adopt. Denso, along with many other kids of Midgar, were infected with a deadly virus called Geostigma. This was something out of Cloud's control as he was also infected with Geostigma and was unable to do anything about it. Unable to save himself or the people of Midgar, Cloud falls into a state of depression, distances himself from his loved ones, and overall just wallows in his own guilt. And who can blame him? Since the very beginning, nobody expected much out of Cloud, and then all of a sudden he was a hero with the weight of the world on his shoulders. That's quite the overwhelming responsibility for someone who's still struggling with their own personal inner demons. Eventually he does find the strength to confront both Aerith and Zack, which they obviously forgave him and gave him the extra boost he needed to save the planet once more. I mean, I appreciate they wanted to expand further on his character and showing that even a hero like Cloud can easily still fall in despair. But they could have easily just kept the ending of the original and it would have been just fine. But you know, they gotta make that extra cash somehow. Take the time to imagine what kind of person that played Final Fantasy VII in the 90s looked like. Chances are the image of a teen or young adult might end up popping up in your head. Probably a bit awkward and nerdy and most likely not the most socially accepted. Sound familiar? Cloud somehow manages to hit the perfect balance between a power fantasy character and a well-written human character that can easily be appreciated by multiple different people. As someone who didn't grow up playing Final Fantasy games or RPG games in general, I can safely say that yes, nostalgia may play a big part why Cloud is loved by many, but it's definitely not the only reason. Cloud had to endure a lot of mental pain. He sought out a goal too big and too ambitious for him to handle, that when the time came, he was even more insecure and much more of a failure than when he first left home to follow his dreams. This aspect of Cloud's character hits really close to home with me personally, and I'm sure as hell it does with many others as well. Take me as an example. I sought out and currently still am to make YouTube my career. The idea of talking about video games for a living seems like a dream come true for me. Yet, since starting this video all the way back in December of 2017, I have struggled to sit down and actually work on finishing this project due to fear of criticism and overall not feeling good enough in terms of my writing skills or my analytical prowess. Instead, I numbed myself by completing video games to 100% just to feel a false sense of accomplishment. Not saying completing games is a bad thing, but when it's being used to escape reality to an extreme is when I have issues with matter. What I'm trying to say is that like Cloud, escaping his own identity and reality of failures and insecurities mirrors of what I've been experiencing for the last couple of months. And that's just personally what resonates with me, when there's other aspects of his character that resonates with others. To being neglected, not being accepted, failing to what's important to you, or acting as you're above everyone else as a defense mechanism, and much, much more. The harsh reality is that no goal worth chasing will be easy, and for the most part you will struggle, you will fail, you will most definitely get discouraged, time and time again. But if you push through, and face reality with all its harshness that it has to offer, and with the help of people who are willing to give you a helping hand, you will come on top, even stronger than before. Because Cloud started off as the biggest zero that somehow did the impossible and became the perfect hero. And while he may just be another fictional character in the grand scheme of things, I'm pretty sure we all heard stories of real life people starting from humble beginnings to becoming whatever they set out to do. So, who's to say stories like that only exist in fantasy worlds?
I can't tell you how to see me, just a cage of bones, there's nothing inside. Will it unleash me?